2024 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Reese,
Present.
Hendricks,
Present.
Fulmer,
Present.
Nelson, Deontay Reese, Alderman,
Present.
Lawson-Heiser. All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you. So I'll get back to the rules of order. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-court. It will take evidence that's presented and it will fully render a decision today for each case. The way that the mechanics of this will work is that the applicant will be allotted up to 15 minutes to present their case. Anyone that is signed up in opposition will be granted up to 3 minutes each to present their opposition. And then the applicant, if necessary, will be allotted up to 5 minutes additional time for rebuttal. The board can extend those times at its discretion as needed. The board may have questions for the applicant and also potentially for anyone signed up to speak. The agenda is ordered as the board requires to conduct business. Usually the cases are ordered based on the filing date. Some cases may take longer than other cases, depending on the complexity of the case and the issues at hand, number of witnesses, etc. When you are called to testify, please address your remarks to the board. No exchanges between the speaker and the audience. Please, no audience demonstrations or testimony other than from the podium. You are under oath and are being recorded, so please don't promise to do something that you're not prepared to do. Don't fail to say something that's material to what you intend to do. And please speak into the microphone. In terms of evidence presented, this is not as formal as court. We will accept documents that you've submitted, including any kind of last-minute submissions that you may bring today. And those items you submit will be weighed appropriately. Cases can either be approved, denied, or they could be granted a conditional decision based on meeting certain conditions. The decisions are final when the minutes are approved, which is typically 1 month from the meeting or at the next scheduled meeting. If you take any action before the decision is final, you proceed at your own risk. Any person who may have a substantial interest in the decision rendered by the board today may request a reconsideration of this decision prior to the approval of the minutes. This reconsideration request must be based on a specific error made by the board, and if you have an issue, you may obtain more information about this process from Mr. Geo Price, the zoning administrator. Once the request for reconsideration has been exhausted, any person with a substantial interest in the decision of the board may appeal to the circuit court, and those appeals must be filed within 30 days after the decision of the board has been mailed, and that does not occur until after the minutes have been approved. If you are unhappy with the board's decision today, please follow the reconsideration and appeal process. Please don't voice your displeasure if you're frustrated with the board. A few housekeeping items for us to consider. Please silence or turn off your cell phones or pagers, including me. Please make sure that your name is on the sign-in sheet for each case. If you need to come and go, please do it quietly as needed. The board may have occasion to enter in executive session or recess. Anyone that's planning to provide testimony today, please rise to be sworn in. Anyone providing testimony today, please rise. If you would, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you very much. That concludes the rules of order. At this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to accept or amend the agenda.
Motion that we
Accept the agenda.
second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept the agenda as outlined. Call for the vote.
All right, those in favor of the adoption of the agenda, Reese,
Aye.
Hendricks,
Aye.
Fulmer,
Yes.
Alderman.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, and the next item is the rules of order, which we just did, and so we'll skip to the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move a motion that we accept the minutes from our May 1st, 2024 meeting as stand and as documented in the agenda that we received.
I would like to request at least we modify the minutes to show that I was not absent.
So there is a motion and an amendment to that motion to modify just that one part that you are not absent. But do I get a second with that amendment?
Second.
So it's been it has been moved and properly second with the approved corrections that the minutes be adopted. And that's from the May 1st, 2024 meeting. I guess we're ready for the vote.
All right, those in favor of the approval of the minutes from the May 1st, 2024 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, Reese,
Aye.
Hendricks,
Aye.
Fulmer,
Aye.
Alderman.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, so the minutes from the May meeting have been approved with that one correction. And now it's time for the public hearing. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Price.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, the first item is case ZV 24-007. The applicant Henrietta Duncan is requesting the Board of Zoning Appeals to grant a variance which would allow the exceeding of the maximum square footage for an accessory structure in the residential 3 or R3 zoning designation. The property is located at 1228 Greenville Circle, and the parcel is comprised of 1.34 acres. Currently, the property is residentially developed. The applicant proposes to construct a 1,200 square foot accessory structure, which, when combined with the existing accessory structure, would exceed the allowable total square footage for accessory structures in the R3 zoning designation. So more specifically, the subject property contains a 2,566 square foot residential structure and a 910 square foot accessory structure. The applicant is proposing again to construct an additional 1,200 square foot accessory structure, which will bring the total for the accessory structures on the site to 2,110 square feet. According to section 26-4.3B4 of the Land Development Code, the total gross floor area of all accessory structures on any lot in a residential district shall not exceed 50% of the gross floor area of the principal structure on the lot, or 1,200 square feet, whichever is greater. Staff has reviewed the request, and staff recommends disapproval. This is based on the criteria, that's before the Board of Zoning Appeals for a variance, in that all the criteria must be found, to be present in order for the board to grant, the variance request, excuse me. So the first criteria is the extraordinary and exceptional conditions. So for this one, staff was unable to identify any extraordinary or exceptional conditions to the subject property that will warrant a variance request. While the other criteria, have been found, the conditions applicable to other properties, those really weren't applicable in this particular case. Addition, excuse me.
That last part, those were what?
Well, one of the things we look at were the extraordinary exceptional conditions to the property that's before you, but we also, in cases, look to see if the conditions were applicable to other properties in the area. And that would be criteria B. Criteria C is the application of the ordinance restricting utilization of the property, and it was found that applying the square footage provisions for accessory structures would not restrict the utilization of the property. So in essence, if this isn't granted, it wouldn't prevent the property from being used in any way. And criteria D, substantial detriment of granting the variance. There would be no substantial detriment to the surrounding properties if the variance was granted. And again, while some of those may be deemed to be more on the positive side for the applicant, it is required that all the criteria be met in order for the variance to be granted. And that's the end of staff's review, unless you have any questions. Yes, sir.
I have a question. When I looked on one of the pages, it showed the lot 38 and the lot 40, we're talking about one.
Yes.
We've
Thank
got
you.
two lots, and
So-
I would need to understand the history and.
Yes, sir. Thank you for bringing that up. So what you have before you is you have a plat of the property. If you,
Back to the map on the, thank you.
we're gonna get, Tommy, if you don't mind, go back to the plat and I'll kind of explain everything to you. So what you have before you is an actual plat of the property. And if you would note in the middle, where it's kind of like it's a beige color, it says lot line to be abandoned. So what happened was when a plat was brought in, combining those two parcels. And the language there about lot line to be abandoned is part of that process. So Tommy, if you go back to the aerial. And the reason why this is still shown to be two parcels is typically whenever there's a administrative subdivision of properties, which would include abandonment of lines. As long as there is not a deed that comes about with the plat that's done, the lines typically remain. So they're still under the same ownership. It's just that right now, they're just still shown as two parcels. If there was a change in deed, in a lot of cases, that's when they will abandon the lines. If the applicant makes a request to our assessor's office, they would then show this as one parcel versus the two that you have. So it just hasn't gone to our assessor's office, the mapping part of the assessor's office, to have that line shown as being abandoned. But legally, it is one parcel.
And that was done a long time ago, I guess.
According to the plat, it was done August 2024, so just recently.
So,
Question. Go ahead.
so let me make sure I understand this clearly. Just a few months ago, these two lots were combined into one.
Yes, sir.
So, and because, and I want to just make sure I'm clear here, and because these two lots were combined into one lot a few months ago, then the consideration for us is to consider them as one parcel of land.
Yes, sir. It is legally one parcel of land.
Want to make sure I get clear.
Yes, sir. And excuse me, Mr. Alderman, you don't mind, so one of the things that you may note, and as Mr. DeLage has the plat up, when these were two separate parcels, you'll note that the existing shed that's on the property was on a separate parcel. However, so had the lines remained, had these remained two separate parcels, the applicant could have put a 1,200 square foot building on what is identified as lot 42A.
Because there was no.
There would have been no
there was
accessory structure.
accessory structure there.
Correct. However, once the lots were combined, that existing, I believe I stated it was 910 square feet, it comes into the calculations for any accessory structures that are added to the property, because now it is one parcel.
I need a little clarity. So if it was two lots initially, if it was two lots and the original accessory structure was put on a lot that did not have a principal, I'm trying to figure out would it be just non-conforming at that point?
Yes, sir. And I think we could probably go back on the history, maybe the applicant could expound upon it a bit, that parcel, and we'll identify that as lot 38, probably had a residential structure on it at one time, for various reasons, and Tommy's gonna try to pull that information up. And at some point, right, so it looks like, or, records had it as a building has an outbuilding in 1955. So I really couldn't tell you if there was a residential structure on there and that was an accessory structure for that parcel or not. Just knows that records seem to show it as being there in 1955 on that parcel.
I guess I'm trying to get to if it was constructed and at some point became non-conforming, or is considered non-conforming now, when she would just have free reign to just build the structure as if it didn't.
No, sir. It's a non-conforming structure, and the reason why it's non-conforming is because it is an accessory structure on a parcel without a principal use.
That's what
Can't be accessory without a principal use being there. So it is allowed to remain. You can't enlarge it or increase what is deemed to be the non-conformity of it. So
But
it
if
was
it can-
there.
Continues non-conforming, then how could she just build another one if it's not? Because it could just be grandfathered in.
Another structure could be built on the property, but it would only be about 300 square feet because now that the parcels are deemed combined and it's deemed to be one parcel, the maximum square footage for accessory structures, whether one was non-conforming or it's gonna be brand new, is still 1,200 square feet or 50% of the, I'll make sure that's correct. It's 50%
floor
of the
area.
gross floor area. Sometimes it's heated with others, but it's the gross floor area of the existing home that's on the property.
I guess I'm trying to word it to the point where if it's one structure and it was originally two structures and it's still her property and it's proposed to do an accessory structure on a lot that does not have a principal, I guess I'm missing what the issue would be because it's her property. It's on a second lot that doesn't have a principal structure on it. I drove by it on a couple of days ago and it doesn't present any major conflicts. It won't be detrimental to the community. I'm just trying to figure out what would prevent just her from just building the structure. I understand that we have the dwelling unit on it. I got it.
So-
yeah, I know that, but I'm saying
It's two parts. One of the things, and I kind of want to correct you a little bit on something that you stated. It's one parcel. You
I
said-
understand, but when she proposed to do it, it was two parcels, and it just became one parcel in June, which is why I'm asking if the initial request was done prior to it being one parcel, and she was told that she could not put it on there because it violated the structure thing.
If you're looking at lot 42A, prior to this, the combination of the parcels, on lot 42A, if the applicant wanted to put a 1,200 square foot building there, they would have been allowed to put it on lot 42A. That would have been prior to the lot lines being abandoned. However, once you make the parcel one, that accessory structure that exists on lot 38 is deemed to be on the same parcel, and because you've made them one.
But let me ask for some clarity here, because there was a statement that was just made, and I want to make sure I understand this. When was this application submitted? When was this application for this structure submitted?
Hadn't met since May.
Let me just get,
August 6th.
when was this?
August 6th.
August 6th was when this application was submitted.
Yes.
Let me just ask a clarifying question. If this, when was the consolidation of these two parcels of land?
So I'm gonna give you two answers. So part of the process is that a staff review and approval is required, which is downstairs in the planning zone. And if you will note that it was approved by our plans reviewer on 6/25/24.
What was approved? Give me some clarity there.
The plat
Okay.
was approved for us. Once we approve it, then the applicant can then take it to the Register of Deeds and have it recorded. Now, it is a legal document. That was done 8/20, oh, I'm sorry. It looks like it says 8/25/22 when it was 24 when it was recorded. But staff stamp, did the review and approved this, in June. So maybe your
Yeah.
question is, the variance request was submitted after
After.
this was done.
Oh, don't mind, you want to move and let us hear from the applicant, because then we might get more clarity. And we can hear from the applicant, and then we can come back. Well, let me make sure, Mr. Price, are you finished with your presentation?
Yes, sir, unless y'all have any other questions.
Any questions for Mr. Price? Then we most certainly, if you all are ready, then we're most certainly ready to hear the applicant, and you're gonna read them.
Ms. Henrietta Duncan, when you come to the podium, would you please state your name and full address for the record?
I'm Henrietta Duncan. My address is 1228 Greenville Circle, Columbia, South Carolina, 29210. Okay, first I want to say thank you for your time and consideration. And I can provide some clarifying information. When I was preparing to come here today, I went back through, because this summer I have spent a lot of time looking at the Land Development Code. And so I went back through it this week, preparing to come here. And, I read the purpose and intent and, those kind of things, to protect or provide adequate open space, air, to facilitate a convenient, attractive, harmonious community, protect and preserve scenic and historic areas. You get the general gist that it's to protect the land, and I'm all for protecting land and protecting open spaces. And then, the reasons, and I'll probably come back to this later because I think the clarification would help get your mind in the right place. But I understand that there have to be some extraordinary and exceptional conditions. And I think that I have an argument that would explain what I think are extraordinary conditions. But to give you a little history of the land, I'm only the second family that's owned this land. And the original landowners bought the land in 1911, and they owned a lot of acreage. Then in 1945, somebody came along, bought some land and made a neighborhood. So there's a neighborhood drawn up in 1945 where most of the lot sizes are 0.3 acres. So they're large lots, and that's what drew me to this neighborhood. I like large lots, I like open spaces, I like nature. In case you haven't noticed it, I am 1 block off of Broad River Road, but you sit on my porch and you feel like you're sitting in the country, except for the ambulances and fire trucks that go up and down all the time. But you really do feel like you're in the country in our neighborhood, and that's something I like. That's what drew me to this neighborhood. I like the convenience. I've been a resident of Richland County my whole life, and I like the convenience of access to doctors, hospitals, whatever, you know. So I hope this is the last house I live in. When I bought it, I used to live in the house to the, as you're looking at it, to the right of what I call the garden. That green box right there is what I call the garden. And the Bufords were the family that bought it in 1911, and they had a horse stable. Before they built their house there, there was a horse stable. So this accessory structure that is existing was a horse stable that they built probably in the early 40s, if not before. And they would talk about, you know, even their horses, they would ride in the house that I used to live in. I've lived on this block since 1988. And so I got to know the family, and he would garden that lot. But he would tell me stories about riding horses all over there and all that stuff. And so this accessory structure that's existing is a stable. And so it's got a lot of dirt floors. You know, it's still got the halfway doors that, you know, the feed bins. It's a really neat building. And
Are you referring to the structure that's in the corner here?
yes. So that was built as a horse stable. And there's a part of it, the middle section of it is a wooden structure, but the middle section of it is a concrete block, has concrete block walls. And that's where they would have kept their feed or other things in the building. But I think what I call the barn adds to the integrity and the history of the neighborhood, you know, to keep that country feel. And that's one reason I would be hesitant just to tear it down to be able to build something. But when I moved into the house at 1215 Balsam Road, the Bufords owned a through lot all the way through the street. From Greenville to Balsam, their lot went all the way through, and it was 1 tax map number. And so it was, even though on the neighborhood, I mean, when they drew up the neighborhood plans, they put the separate lot numbers, you know, they drew it out just like for all the separate lots for the neighborhood. So it does have 2 lot numbers, but it was 1 tax map number when the Bufords were there. Until 2014, when I bought the garden from the daughter of the Bufords.
Which is the lot with the horse, with the barn?
Right.
Okay.
Because at that time, I lived at 1215 Balsam Road, and both of the Bufords had died, so their daughter owned the land, and I would see them spend all that time cutting the grass in the garden and maintaining it, and I was like, you know, I sure would like to have that lot. You know, if you're interested in selling it, I sure would like to know about it. And so we drew up an agreement, and I bought the lot. Well, after the closing, I get a call from the county saying, well, you're the only person that could have bought this lot because it has a structure on it, and it has to be on a primary residence. So at that time, the county combined 1215 Balsam Road, which is the lot that is the garden. So that became 1 tax map number for me at 1215 Balsam Road.
Okay. I don't want to infringe on her time, but I want to make sure that I get clarity as you go along.
Okay.
So I want to make sure we give you all the time that you need. You're the only case here today. I want to make sure I understand this clearly. When you purchase the lot that you're referring to as the garden, where were you living then?
And looking at this picture, I was to the right of the garden. There's a house at 1215 Balsam Road.
So you purchased this property that is the garden, and you're thinking you're just purchasing, lack of a better term, lot.
Well, at that time, I thought because 1215 Balsam Road is a nice house, you know, but I bought it as a first-time home buyer, and I had no idea I'd be there as long as I was. And it's just not my forever home. You know, it's 2 stories. You know, there were things about it I didn't like. And so when I bought the garden, in my mind, I thought, I'll build something over there. I'll just build what I want and have it there. And so, you know, it takes time. You know, the garden had kind of gotten overgrown, so we had to do work clearing it. You know, I had to get my budget and, you know, get in mind what I want to do. I kind of, you know, had been looking at plans of houses over the years, thinking I might build something on there. But then, you know, the cost of construction, you know, everything that goes into that, I kept talking to the daughter. I'm like, you know, well, if you just decide you want to sell the house, I sure would be interested in talking to you about it. You know, but she had emotional attachments to the house. She didn't want to sell the house. So it wasn't until 2020 where she decided she was ready to sell the house. So at that point, I thought, well, I could buy that house and it could be my forever home, and and even if I do some renovations to it, it's cheaper than building something on the garden. So I bought the house at 1228 Greenville Circle in 2020. And I sold the house at 1215 Balsam Road. But I wanted to keep the garden because I like that big lot. I like all the way through, you know. So when that sale went through, it became 2 separate tax map numbers because that sale, they didn't combine it. I thought the same thing would happen when I bought 1215. When I bought the garden, I thought it would get combined with 1228, but that didn't happen. So I got a survey in the winter of 2020. I tried to get a survey to combine the lots because I was trying to get back to the way the lot was with the Bufords from 1945 till 1988 or 89 when I bought the garden. So I was just trying to return it to what it had been most of its life.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
You buy the garden first, and when you buy that garden lot, the county tells you that you're the only person that could have bought that because there's no structure on there. And I'm assuming, and I want to make sure I don't assume improperly, you were at 1215 Balsam at the time. So 1215 Balsam and the garden were combined into one lot.
Yes, sir.
Because you were the only person who could buy it because it was a contiguous lot. Is that right?
Correct. Because it had an accessory structure on it, and it needed to have a primary residence.
Right, so I got that. So when you sell, if you would go back to that map for me, just so I can have some reference. When you sell 1215 Balsam, you're only selling the part of that lot that has the primary structure on it. You're maintaining what was the garden, and you're now affixing that garden lot to what is the residence that you purchased on Greenville, trying to connect those 2 properties back
That's what
together.
I thought would happen. Like I said, when I bought the garden, it automatically got combined with 1215.
Right.
And so I just assumed that I'd get a call like I did before and saying, well, we're gonna have to combine these. And I would have said, at that point, I would have said, okay, you know, when I bought 1215, when I bought the garden, I really wanted them separate because I thought I was gonna build something. But then they called me and said, no, we have to combine them. And so I'm like, well, okay, we'll deal with that later, you know. Then when I bought 1228, I didn't get that call.
1228, that's Greenville Circle.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't get a
making
call
sure I
like
follow.
that, but I still felt like they needed to be combined. And so I contacted a surveyor, said I need a survey to combine the lots. This was during COVID. Things got lost in the shuffle. the guys came out one really cold day and did the survey, but then they never provided me with a survey. They never gave me anything to get recorded. But I was so frustrated that time, they never billed me either. So I just said, well, if nobody else cares, then I'm not gonna worry about it. And so I just kind of let the ball drop. And so those 2 lots were separate since I purchased 1228 Greenville in late 2020. Then my mom, who was also living on Balsam, she died, and she has a garage in her yard. So that's where I keep my riding lawnmower. That's where we keep workshop stuff if we do woodworking or anything. And so once she died, I said, well, I'm gonna need to get rid of that house. So what am I gonna do with all this stuff that I've been using over in her garage? Well, why don't I build a garage? So I look around and I think, well, my first dream was to put a garage near the house. So when you can drive your car in and walk into the house. But along that lot, I've got mature trees. And I don't want to cut down these mature trees to build a garage. And if I build a garage closer to the house, I want it to be a nice brick structure that matches the house and matches the neighborhood. And, so it would be more expensive. So then I thought, well, I could put a garage in the garden because mostly storage. We've got a boat, riding lawnmower, a 1990 Mustang, stuff I want to store in the garage that is not going to be daily use. And so I thought, well, I'll put a garage in the garden. And so I found a plan for a garage for the garden, thinking, well, I own 1.3 acres. There shouldn't be any problem putting a garage out there. So I come marching down here and go, well, I didn't want a permit to do this. And they go, you can't do that.
So Ms. Duncan, your time is expired, but I want to give you just a few more minutes.
Okay.
But I want you to, in that time, I want you to help us to understand what you think and you got some time to come back too.
Okay.
So, we'll have, if somebody else is here to rebut, I don't know. But I want you to help us to understand what in your mind constitute the extraordinary and exceptional conditions. And I know you kind of might
Right.
kind of mix it in there,
Yeah.
but I want you to be very definitive with us
Okay.
about what is considered in your mind extraordinary and exceptional conditions.
Okay. In the Land Development Code, in section 26-3.3F, it provides what the average lot sizes and the minimums and maximums of lot sizes. And that says that a lot area is about, let's just say 7,500 square feet. My lots, I've got almost 60,000 square feet. I've got 30,000 square feet in the garden, and I've got 28,000 on the house lot. And so I think, what we have to be careful of is we can create a land development code, and it applies to everybody in an R3, but everybody will bring you a piece of paper that has their plat on it. But what you have to realize is this picture does not really tell you what the real picture is, because somebody that's got a 7,500 square foot lot, their plat's gonna look pretty much like this when you look at a picture of it. But when you go out there and you see that I've got 1.3 acres and there's all this open space, we're not talking about a 7,500 square foot lot. We're talking about, 58,000 square foot lot. And I think that's the extraordinary condition that would lend itself to a variance for this building.
So I would thank you for presenting. I'd ask if there are any questions that are coming from, and if you have a question that comes after you hear from the next witness, we can always come back. So if there are any questions, thank you very much.
right,
We
thank you.
appreciate it.
All right, Ms. Aretha Foster. Were you speaking on behalf, for the applicant, or you're just here for moral support?
More for support.
Okay,
We're neighbors.
okay. As far as sign-in?
So then that means we've heard from the zoning administrator and we've heard from the applicant. Any additional comments or clarity?
Yes, sir. Normally, we don't participate, but I think there are a few things we want to make sure we, address. I'm not sure, maybe, hopefully I heard this incorrectly, but I don't know who from staff or any county representative that would have called it or made, spoken to the applicant to state, you have to combine your parcels. That's not something we would do, just, there are too many parcels in the county, we don't go out and tell people that they have to do it, that's an individual decision, so that didn't come from staff to combine it.
How'd it get done? I'm sorry.
So, also, purchasing properties adjacent or abutting, another parcel, even though it's under the same ownership, that's not the legal mechanism for combining the parcels. They don't automatically become combined. This is the process that you saw where plat is prepared, reviewed by staff, and then recorded register of deeds is that process. And I think the other part, that was what she was referring to about the lot size being a lot larger. Again, so typically from a variance standpoint, a variance is usually when there are conditions that almost prohibit you from being able to do something on your property. If the lot was too small to meet setbacks, that's typically something you ask for a variance. There was something going on with the parcel, again, that doesn't really go with the other parcels in that area. It's not something that's common. It's something that may necessitate a variance request. If you have a larger parcel than others, that's not necessarily a hardship that will prevent you from being able to utilize the property.
A question. There was a comment that was made about tree line that are currently abutting, and I'm thinking that this is the residential structure that is on Greenville. And that, thank you, yes. The placement of a garage that's contiguous to the house, attached to the house, would then, and this is a question for you, I wanna make sure I get clarity here. If a person is adding to the residential structure and they're adding on, and it meets all of the set-aside requirements, you have the ability to add that on without any issues as far as a variance, if you're adding to the residential structure.
Yes, I think one of the things that you're referencing, sir, is if they were to build an attached.
An attached,
An
yeah.
addition, let's go, build an addition onto the existing residential structure, which it would be one structure, then that would not count towards the square footage of an accessory structure. It would be part of the home.
Part of the home, so then this whole, the language around the restrictions on an accessory structure, meaning 1,200 square feet or 50%, is it? 50% of the gross floor area, that then wouldn't be applicable.
No, sir, it'd be
Okay.
no addition if someone wanted to add on a bedroom, a kitchen, dining room, in some case, a garage, storage area to their home. The addition of the home is not considered to be an accessory, so these, the sections of the Land Development Code that have been referenced, throughout would not be applicable.
I asked that for a question. I want to ask an additional question to you. And this is around precedent. This is around precedent. And precedent, here I'm asking about the conservation of tree lines and/or foliage. I don't know the right wordage for this,
No, I
but
think what you're
is
saying
there
is correct.
precedent for the conservation of trees and/or foliage to be what might be an extraordinary or exceptional condition?
If that was, if that's kind of one of the directions that would be looked at from the board for a reason to grant the variance. Again, one of the things that we stated earlier is that all of the criteria have to be met, so, all criteria.
I'm just trying to get through this one
So
first.
in this particular case, if you were saying that the existing trees on the property, or deemed to be extraordinary and exceptional for this property, then we would get to the second criteria, which about conditions applicable to other properties. So now we will need to look at other properties in the area and say, okay, well, do they have trees on their properties that are situated that potentially could hinder them in any type of addition onto the property, whether it be attached or detached to the property also.
Well, I asked this for a very specific reason. And I understand clearly where you are. I'm just sharing with you just a bit of the rationale for why I asked this question. I just came from a conference on heat and about foliage coverage and the importance of that as we're thinking about regulations. And I know where we are currently, but I don't take for granted what the impact is of foliage, and particularly full-grown foliage on property. And so I just wanted to ask that question just to see if there was precedent around the preservation of tree lines for an exceptionality. And I don't know, I still don't know that I've gotten a response yet about whether there is a precedent.
So the answer is no. There's
Okay.
nothing in our code that specifically addresses that.
Okay. I just kind of want to know, because I know we're going to ultimately have to make the decision here. I want everybody to have all the information.
Could you put a view of 1220 Balsam on the backside? Look at that from that point.
Is that where the marker here, is that considered the garden where you have that pointer?
Yes, sir.
So can I just, so I want to go out on a limb here and see if we could kind of get clarity. All right, so what I'm looking at is, so we've identified the accessory as, the owner stated, it's a horse barn. It was originally a horse barn, and it's being preserved as a horse barn. Is that correct? You're trying to keep the integrity of the structure as a horse barn that was possibly built 70 years ago?
Yeah, excuse me. I think if there's a question for the applicant will need to come to the podium to address it, so we
Okay.
can make sure that we record it in the
Okay,
minutes.
sorry about that. Yeah, if you could come, because I want to get clarity on it. So,
Yes,
Do-
the barn, what I call the barn, has been there probably since the 40s, maybe before, I don't know. And it's just, I think it's a neat structure. You know, when I bought the garden, I put a new roof on it, we painted it, we put some insulation in it. I do use it for some storage, but it's not optimum storage. And like I said, there's no place to drive in a riding lawnmower or the boat, if we want to put a boat in there. So I just think it adds to the integrity of the neighborhood and the history of the neighborhood.
I'm asking because, and I have to yield to the staff on this, concerning agricultural structures. I believe there isn't a requirement on that. If it was inherited, because I'm thinking you just inherited the barn, it was built
Probably before
70
any
years
of us were
ago.
born, yeah.
And you're just stuck with it, and it's non-conforming, you're not using it for the original intent for it, so it's just on your property, and you don't want to destroy it because it has sentimental value, or you're trying to preserve the integrity of it. So I guess I'm asking, would it be room on establishing it as a barn, and it's non-conforming at this point in time, and she inherited it, and it would give her free will to build another accessory structure on that? That's just a question I'm asking.
No, sir.
Okay.
It is deemed to be an accessory structure. Regardless of how it's really being used, it's not part of the principal structure, but it is deemed to be an accessory structure. Again, from a staff standpoint, I'm not gonna sit up here and say, hey, I understand what your thinking is and where you're leaning. I'm not gonna sit up here and say, I disagree with you in a way. You see it, you're right, it may not be an issue. Staff actually acknowledged that the granting of the variance would not be a detriment to the surrounding properties in there. But the recommendation of staff was based strictly on the criteria of the code. And so, whether it makes sense or not, or, something that you may want to do is one thing, but as long as you can show that all of the criteria for granting a variance can be met, that's what we're looking for.
What about loopholes? What about, because I rode by the property and I'm looking at 1208, and it has two accessory structures on it, physical accessory structures on it, and it's 2 doors down
Go back.
from the owner. The 1208 Greenville Circle, it has the primary residence, has another structure behind it, and then it has 2 more structures behind it. So I'm not trying to, but there are 2 accessory structures on.
Just the information, the parcel information. Come down to. Okay, so again, we could go back and have to do some research, but if this is anything like the, I guess, former horse stable, I guess it's on lot 30 that we're referring to. If the home, go back up, Tommy, please. All right, so you look at the residential was built in 1940, go down some, Tommy. Our records have our outbuilding that was built in 1980. Looks like another outbuilding was built in 1991. So again, we would have to go, and looks like there's another one built in 1991. We would have to go back and look at what was going on with that, each of those structures, exactly when they were built. If a variance was granted, maybe one of them was deemed to be non-conforming due to the age to which it was done.
I'm with you. I'm asking questions because I'm trying to, get clarity on it so I can make the best decision in this situation.
Yes, the question about the lots. Could it ever be could the lots be uncombined in the future?
Sure, as long as each of the parcels, the newly created parcels, which it would be, met the dimensional requirements of the R3 zoning designation.
Specifically, would this lot number
38.
38, would it meet, what, if she built this garage and then comes back and go, oh, I want to build another something and another something and another something, what would preclude her from doing that?
You mean if there were 2 separate parcels?
If she wanted to sell that lot if there's this structure that's on it, if we grant this exception, she builds a garage on it, she then wants to sell that lot, what else can I build on it? I'm looking long-term, what are you gonna use that land for?
It could be used for a residential structure. That's what it's zoned for, so if someone bought it and wanted to put a home on the property, they could.
So it sounds like if, sequence-wise, if she would've come in here before they were combined, it wouldn't have been an issue?
Prior to the parcels being combined, she would not have been able to put the proposed addition on what would have been lot 38, because, again, there was no principal structure. The existing structure was non-conforming, and you can't expand a non-conforming use. Or in this case, non-conforming structure. And also that would essentially be creating an illegal structure, so that's the reason why we would have denied it.
So, Ms. Duncan, is there clarity?
Yeah, if I could just add, because if I wanted to put a garage on 42, which is closer to the house, then I'd have to cut down mature trees, which I don't really want to do. And so to me, those mature trees adds to the integrity of the neighborhood as well. And so that's why I said, well, I've got plenty of open space out there on the garden, I'll put it out there.
And last question for me. So I see it says total 1.34 acres. Is that accurate? Because when I did the acreage on your primary residence, it was, I believe it was 0.64 of an acre on that. So is the total, is that included, or is lot 38 1.34 acres?
The two combined is 1.3. Because
Okay.
like I said, when the neighborhood was drawn, it was drawn to like 0.3 of an acre, and the Beauforts retained 4 of those neighborhood lots. And so they had, 4 of the 0.3 acres.
And a question to the staff again. So is there something where the 2 acres, if you had 2 acres,
Yeah.
that it would increase the chances of it going to 2,400 square feet if she had 2 acres of land instead of 1.34?
Sorry about that. So Mr. DeLay just pulled up section 26-4.3. I believe that would be, go up sometime, please. B4C. There are no size restrictions for, I'm sorry, there are 2 parts here, so it's B and C. The total gross floor area of accessory structures on any lot in the RT district, that's at least 2 acres. Shall not exceed a maximum of 50% of the gross floor area or 2,500 square feet. And there's C, which says no size restrictions for accessory structures that are associated with agricultural uses in the RT district, provided the lot size is greater than 2 acres and that there's a 100-foot setback. But in this particular case, this parcel is not zoned RT, so those will not be applied to it.
Let me make sure I understand this. So under the current zoning, which is
R3, which is
R3,
residential 3.
under the current zoning, R3, this is an unallowable structure. But based on, if you would put that, the document that you just had up that gave us, if this was RT, then there would be different considerations.
So the structure's allowed, the there's square footage limitations. But what we're referring to, if this parcel was on RT, depending upon the use, it could go up to 2,500 if for just residential accessory use, or if it was for agricultural use, accessory use, then there would be no size limitations.
Would that be under that RT zoning criteria? This is just me asking questions about that. Under those RT zoning restrictions, is that a combined square footage or is that just one
Combined,
combined?
yes.
And currently, there is 900 square feet in the current barn, and the request for the addition is how much?
1,200.
1,200. Okay. All right, so thank you very much. We appreciate it. We have heard testimony. I'm not sure if there are any additional questions from this board. Any additional questions?
I would like to make the comment that this is my, I'm trying to understand, there's a lot to this, so, this is it's not as straightforward as most, requests are, so.
I
thank you for
understand.
bearing
it.
with us.
And as a staff, we understand, I've been doing this for kind of forever. And I can honestly say so has Mr. DeLage now. So we've been doing this and, a lot of things that we as a staff, we have to talk about these things and make sure we're on the same page. So I do understand, if you have some questions or trying to get a better understanding, but, as a staff, we're here to, try to help you out.
And we appreciate the clarity from both sides. But I do want to say that we have to make a decision based on the information that's presented. And so with that said, I'm open to entertaining a motion regarding this particular case.
I'd like to move that we approve and grant the variance request.
You have to provide some rationale for making that decision.
And it's usually based on the criteria that you have in your package.
A motion has been made. So for lack of a second, then you want to make an amendment to the motion? Will you speak into the microphone, please?
I would like to add to the motion that we approve the variance based on the historical precedents, number one, and number two, I like the trees.
Second.
So it has been moved and properly second. And I guess I need someone to restate the motion, just so I'll know what's going into the record. Is there clarity?
I move that we approve the variance request based on historical precedents and just based on historical precedent.
Since it's been moved and seconded, and I just asked for a restating of the motion, it's been moved and seconded. Is that the original motion and is that the second? I want to make sure we got this clear.
Yeah, so for clarity, I'm okay with eliminating the tree.
Trees, yeah.
But it's something that we need to look at. But anyway, that's beyond the scope of this.
All right, it's been moved and properly seconded. We're ready for the vote.
So I want to make sure I have put this for the record. You note it says within our land development code, it says that the Board of Appeals, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall approve a variance request only on finding the applicant demonstrates all of the findings. And that is one, the extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. Two, the conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. Three, the conditions are not the result of the applicant's own actions. Four, because of these conditions, the application of the standards in this ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, and the authorization of a variance would not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the granting of a variance will not harm the character of the district. So your motion, again, if that's, if that's the motion you want to make, just wanted to point out that those findings are typically what is required in order for a variance to be granted. So if you wouldn't mind, if you rephrasing it in any way, to show that this criteria. Again, I will also say, if this is something that you just want to go ahead and approve, that is at the board's discretion, but, kind of based on legal precedence, that you're not showing that you're following the criteria that's found for granting.
And I have a question, Mr. Administrator. Am I allowed to rebuttal the motion, or is just a matter of me voting at the end?
No, typically, someone makes a motion, and then you go into a discussion of
Okay.
it, so you can have a discussion of it. Or typically, yeah.
All right, so it's been moved and properly seconded. It's time for question. So, any comments?
Particularly, I'm not in a disagreement with what's being said. However, we do have a code of laws and ethics that we do have to follow and maintain, and that we swore in on this board. So it's not about a personal opinion, and in my actual opinion on being on this board almost 2 years. I've heard the testimony, but I would like for us to discuss and consider the fact of disapproving it because of our integrity as board members, and the fact that the variance exceptions aren't being met and laid out, which is in black and white. It has nothing to do with personal feelings.
Let me offer a.
You do have a motion, I'm sorry,
Right.
now that you say you do have a motion
I-
on.
we got a
the table,
motion on the
y'all will
floor, yeah.
need to take a vote on that.
Well, let me offer a friendly amendment to the motion,
Please.
all right? I would move to approve. With the understanding that the extraordinary and exceptional conditions are those that are deemed historical and that are also considerate of the tree line conditions, that I'm gonna take that back. I'm gonna take that amendment, that motion to act. I'm trying to. I think there's a motion on the floor. We'll keep that. Hold on, let me do this. There's a motion on the floor. We'll keep that motion on the floor. Let's go for a vote.
All right, we have a motion for the approval of case ZV 24-007, based on the historical precedence of the structure, the 910 square foot shed. Those in favor of the motion for approval? Reese,
Nay.
Hendricks,
Nay.
Fulmer,
Yes.
Alderman.
Yes.
All right, so that is a tie, and I believe as your rules state, that motion fails.
And so with the failing of that motion, where are we in the consideration of this application?
I think we would need to have another amendment. So, I'll make sure I read this. This is from your rules of procedure, current rules of procedure. In cases, and this is under 3.5 on the disposition, impasse. So, first, under B, tie vote, any motion that receives a tie vote is considered to have failed for lack of a majority. There's a tie, under impasse, tie vote on motion to approve, no motion to deny offered. In cases where there's a motion to approve a request for a special exception or for a variance or to affirm an administrative decision, and such motion to approve or to affirm results in a tie vote and thus is deemed to have failed for lack of a majority, and there is no motion to deny the request in the same case, the chair, or in his or her absence, the vice chair may declare the case to have been denied for lack of a majority on the motion to approve or to affirm, and no further motion such as a motion to deny having been offered. Nothing in this rule prohibits the board from continuing a case for any purpose authorized by law or by these rules or by the board's bylaws.
I want to ask a clarifying question. Now that we know that this motion has failed, I want to, and I'm not sure that hypotheticals are appropriate in this particular case, but it's, my question is regarding the request for a zoning change. Is this property eligible for a request for a zoning change? And I'm assuming every property is.
I believe the answer is yes, but maybe not to the zoning designation that would help for
Right.
help as far as for the accessory structure that was referenced earlier regarding the RT zoning designation.
Are we able to discuss the criteria that needs to be met, the 5 of them? Because I'm looking at them and I'm going through them in my head. I'm like, I think we cover, I mean, the first one would be subjective, but the other 2 are clear. We saw a property 2 doors down with 2 accessories. So the first one, extraordinary exceptional, she inherited a barn that she wants to preserve the integrity of the structure. She hasn't torn it down because she wants to preserve the integrity of it. It was inherited, she bought it with the property through transactions. Number 2, these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. We saw a property 2 doors down with 2 accessory properties on there, so they had to come through the board at some point in time. These conditions are not a result of the applicant's own actions. That's self-explanatory. Because these conditions, the applicant's standards, ordinary piece of property effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict utilization, that's not an issue. And it doesn't authorize variance when not substantially detriment to adjacent properties. So I'm not, maybe the first one is subjective, but the 2, 3, 4, and 5, I think we cover.
Administrator.
Okay, I mean, if just kind of looking at these, so you're looking at the 5 criteria, and again, is the board's wishes, but when you say that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property, whatever you deem to be extraordinary, exceptional, and then so the next criteria would be, are these applicable to other properties in the area? I believe that we've actually seen certain cases where someone's asked for a variance because they needed to encroach into a setback. But looking at what was extraordinary, exceptional about the particular property was it was non-conforming due to its size based on the zoning requirements, for that district, the dimensional requirements. However, when it's determined that those same conditions apply to other parcels in the area, then that typically voids the approval of the variance request, because again, it's not something just specific to that parcel. It's something that applies to others. Again, I mean, so going back to something that y'all stated earlier on your motion, the historical precedence of it, I mean, to deem something to be historical. I mean, again, there's historical and then there's old. You know, and I'm not interested in saying, you know, something's been there for a while. That doesn't make it historical. But if you're gonna deem something to be historical, you know, one of the things, okay, well, then there are no other historical structures on there. But if it's not deemed to be historical, it's just old, well, there are a lot of, you know, you can go through this is an older neighborhood. So I'm sure that there are a number of older structures out there. So again, it probably would be applicable to other properties in the area. As you go through the third criteria, these are not a result of the applicant's own actions. Again, that's something that typically doesn't occur. We've had you know, if someone came and subdivided their property a certain way, and then they said, we need a variance, then again, those are a result of the actions on the applicants that they've created the hardship. So essentially, you cannot create your own hardship. And then you get to 4, and I think this is the one I think that I was listening to, particularly when you were speaking, where it talks about because of these conditions, the application of the standards in this ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. So essentially, as we go up, we say that if we apply the standards of our code, this property can't reasonably be used. Again, so there are some cases, and I think you had one not too long ago where the lot was really small. It was way below the dimensional standards for that zoning designation. And as such, no variance, no development of the site, it would just sit there. So that's typically when you're looking at number 4, when that applies. In this particular case, as a staff, when we looked at this, if the variance is denied, it really doesn't stop the utilization of any of the properties. There are options. You could add about a 300 square foot addition onto the property, to total 1,200, because if the existing is 900 square feet, then that essentially gives you 300 square feet, wiggle room for an additional structure, or maybe to add to it. Listening to the applicant and reading through, and I understand why this would happen, but again, I'm just pointing out the existing structure could be torn down and a new 1,200 square foot structure could be built. And again, another option really could be, maybe remove some of the trees and do an addition onto the home. But normally, I would tell you, as you get to criteria number 5, a lot of times the variance is, grant variance really probably doesn't really affect properties. But there could be a case, maybe you grant a variance for an encroachment into the setbacks. But guess what? You just put that house right on the property line, which is right near the neighbor. So that could be a detriment, to the neighbor. So, there's just different ways to look at these things as you go through. But the most important thing, and I had to learn this a long time ago, for started, is that all of these criteria have to be met, for the granted variance.
Hearing all the clarity, is there a motion to be made about the consideration of this case?
So, that's when we should jump in. So just reading from your roles, that really a motion is not necessary in this case, because the original failed. If the board felt necessary, you may, again, you could continue the case. Maybe there's some additional information you may be looking for as such. Maybe, it's not something we normally try to do. Maybe you want to have this case again where you have an odd number or additional members to break it. There, you do have a few things before you, but based on what has transpired right now, what we have is a motion for approval that's been denied, and so really it's at the will of the board how to proceed from here.
All right, so as I understand it, Mr. Administrator, then we have made a motion. That motion has failed for lack of approval. Not enough votes. We can actually go into continuation and bring that back when there is additional board members here.
You essentially be rehearing the case all over again, or by your rules, you as the chair, or, you're here, so as the chair, you can declare the case had been denied because of the lack of motion for the previous motion. Lack of majority for the previous motion.
In my official capacity as chair, then I will rule that this case has been denied.
All right? And that will be the end of this case.
Thank you all very much. At the,
I thought I heard 3 yeses and 1 no, but how did it become a tie?
No, there was actually 2 noes and 2 yes was the official vote. And there was in the reading of the public notice. So there was specific instructions if you think that, there's a reason for you.
I just misunderstood.
No. I just want to make sure you got that part because there's a official, there's some recourse, exactly. So if you feel like you want to follow that recourse, please make sure you do so. You have all rights to be able to do that. And so at this time, since that's the only case that is on the agenda for us, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well, you want to skip other business?
Oh. And is there any additional business?
No, sir.
Thank you. Thank you much. I do want to make this declaration that I will be submitting my letter of resignation at the end of this meeting. And I want to say that it's been an absolute pleasure to serve as the chair of this board. And I have been honored to be elected to serve in the House of Representatives for my district in Lower Richland. And so I want to say that the work that I've been a part of this board has absolutely endeared me to want to serve even more in my community. And I appreciate the professionalism of the people that are in front of me and how much you have supported me throughout my tenure here. And I thank you very much. And for my fellow board members, I know that this might have been a very trying and really challenging case. And I think that it's a testament to just the complexity of the issues that come before this board. So I wish you well as you endeavor further to really handle the business of the county. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'd like that to go under the other business. So thank you for allowing me an opportunity to submit that. And lastly, yes.
I'm sorry, just for your resignation is effective.
It will be effective after this board meeting.
Okay.
All right. After this board meeting, because the November elections will happen before our next board meeting.
So the reason why I asked that question, so it looks like Ms. Hendricks as the vice chair would take on the role of the chair. You as the board have a choice. You could go ahead and do a special election for someone to serve out the remainder of the year as the vice chair, or just kind of keep as is for the remainder of the year, and then at the beginning of next year, then have the election for the chair and vice chair. I just wanted to put that out there for you so you can think about this prior to the next meeting.
A lot to consider. So with that said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
For that motion, Mr. Chair, congratulations on your future endeavors. I thank you for everything that you've taught us and how you've inspired us here on this board, and I'll be looking for you on television. Mr. Administrator, could you please notate for the record the next date for official hearing?
Do we have any cases for November? So at this time, we don't have any cases for November. So if there's going to be another board member, and we'll let you know probably the 1st of November. It will be December the 4th.
Motion that we adjourn, Mr. Chair.
It's been moved and properly second that we adjourn this meeting. We stand ready for the vote.
Those in favor of the adjournment, Reese,
Aye.
Hendricks,
Aye.
Fulmer, Alderman.
Aye.